In the blood-soaked battlefields of ancient Ireland, warriors would freeze in terror at the sight of a lone crow circling overhead, for they knew death itself was watching. This was no ordinary bird. This was the Morrigan, the shape-shifting goddess who decided who would live and who would die. Picture this. You're a Celtic warrior, gripping your sword as enemy forces charge across the misty moor. The clash of metal rings through the air, but suddenly, everything goes quiet. Above you, a massive crow lands on a nearby stone, its black eyes fixed on you with an intelligence that makes your blood run cold. This isn't just any crow. This is the Morrigan, and she's here to collect souls. The Morrigan stands as one of the most terrifying and fascinating figures in Celtic mythology. She's not your typical goddess of love or harvest. No, she's something far more primal, far more dangerous. She represents the brutal reality of war, the inevitability of death, and the raw power that comes from accepting both. Before we dive deeper into her dark realm, hit that subscribe button because we're about to explore the shadowy corners of mythology that most people never dare to enter. The Morrigan isn't just one goddess. She's a triple deity, existing as three separate beings who share one terrifying purpose. Think of her as death wearing three different masks. Sometimes she appears as Bad Bee, the battle crow who flies over battlefields, her harsh cries driving warriors into a frenzy. Other times, she's Macha, the sovereignty goddess who claims the land through blood and conquest. And then there's Nemain, the panic bringer, whose very presence on a battlefield could turn brave men into quivering cowards. But here's where it gets really interesting. The Morrigan doesn't just watch war, she shapes it. She doesn't merely predict death, she chooses it. Ancient Celtic warriors believed that seeing her before battle meant one thing: your fate was sealed. Imagine you're standing in the pre-dawn darkness, about to face an enemy army. The mist clings to the ground like ghostly fingers, and somewhere in that grey void, you hear the sound of water. Not just any water, the rhythmic splash of someone washing clothes by a river. You creep closer, and there she is, a woman bent over the water, scrubbing what looks like armor and weapons. But as you get closer, your heart stops. The water runs red with blood, and the clothes she's washing belong to you. This is one of the Morrigan's most chilling manifestations, the washer at the ford. Celtic warriors knew that if you encountered her in this form, washing your armor in the river before battle, you would not see another sunset. She wasn't cruel about it. She was simply stating a fact, like reading the weather. Your time has come, she would say, her voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. The crows will feast tonight, and your name will echo in the halls of the dead. The warrior might try to bargain, to plead, to change his fate. But the Morrigan's decisions were final. She had already seen how the battle would unfold, already counted the bodies that would litter the field. But the Morrigan's power went far beyond simply predicting death. She was a shapeshifter of incredible ability, able to transform into any creature that served her purpose. One moment, she might appear as a beautiful woman, her eyes sparkling with dangerous allure. The next, she could become a massive wolf, her fangs bared and ready to tear apart anyone who crossed her path. Her most famous transformation, though, was into the crow or raven. These weren't just any birds. They were her spies, her messengers, her instruments of terror. Celtic battlefields would often be covered with these black-winged creatures, and warriors knew that each one might be the Morrigan herself, watching, judging, deciding who deserved to die. The psychological impact was devastating. Imagine trying to fight when you know that death itself is circling overhead, when every shadow might hide the goddess who could end your life with a thought. Warriors would sometimes break ranks just from seeing too many crows gathering, knowing that the Morrigan was preparing for a feast. One of the most famous stories involving the Morrigan centers around the legendary hero, Cuchulainn, Ireland's greatest warrior. The tale begins on a day when Cuchulainn was traveling alone, his chariot cutting through the Irish countryside like a blade through silk. He was young, powerful, and convinced of his own invincibility. That's when he saw her, a stunning woman standing by a river, her red hair flowing like liquid fire in the morning light. She was washing herself in the water, and when she looked up at him, her eyes held depths that seemed to go on forever. "I am a king's daughter," she said, her voice like honey mixed with wine. "I have come to you because of your great fame. I have fallen in love with you based on the stories of your incredible deeds." Cuchulainn, for all his strength and skill, was still a young man. But something about this woman made him cautious. There was something in her smile that reminded him of a predator showing its teeth. "This is not a good time for me to meet with a woman," he replied, trying to sound polite but firm. "I am heading into battle, and I cannot afford distractions." The woman's expression didn't change, but the air around them seemed to grow colder. "You are making a mistake, Cuchulainn. I could be your greatest ally, or your most terrible enemy. Choose wisely." "I have no need for help from anyone," Cuchulainn declared, his pride getting the better of his caution. "I fight my own battles and win them with my own strength." The moment those words left his mouth, the woman began to change. Her beautiful features twisted and shifted, her skin darkening until it was black as midnight. Her hair became feathers, her arms became wings, and her lovely voice became the harsh cry of a crow. "Then you have chosen," the Morrigan said, her transformed voice echoing with dark promise. "From this day forward, I will be your enemy. Every battle you fight, I will be there to hinder you. Every moment of victory you claim, I will turn to ash in your mouth." With that, she launched herself into the sky, her massive black wings blocking out the sun for a moment, before she disappeared into the distance. Cuchulainn stood there, suddenly aware that he had just made the worst mistake of his life. True to her word, the Morrigan became Cuchulainn's constant tormentor. During his most crucial battles, she would appear in different forms to sabotage him. Sometimes, she would become an eel, wrapping herself around his legs as he fought in a river, trying to drag him under the water where his enemies could finish him off. "You should have accepted my offer," she would hiss as he struggled against her coils. "You could have had the greatest goddess of war as your ally. Instead, you chose pride over wisdom." Other times, she would transform into a wolf, leading a pack to attack his horses and disrupt his chariot charges at the most critical moments. Or she might become a red heifer, stampeding through the battlefield with supernatural strength, scattering his allies and giving his enemies the advantage they needed. But the Morrigan's harassment of Kul Chulan revealed something important about her nature. She wasn't evil in the way we might think of evil today. She was testing him, pushing him to become stronger, forcing him to face challenges that would forge him into a truly legendary hero. In her twisted way, she was still helping him, even as she made his life miserable. This paradox lies at the heart of what the Morrigan represents. She is both destroyer and creator, the force that tears down the weak and builds up the strong. She doesn't just bring death, she brings the kind of death that has meaning, the kind that creates legends and inspires future generations. Celtic warriors understood this better than we might today. They knew that war wasn't just about winning or losing. It was about proving your worth in the face of ultimate danger. The Morrigan's presence on the battlefield elevated every conflict from a mere fight to a cosmic test of character. When she appeared to warriors, she often spoke in prophecies that were both gift and curse. "I see your future," she might say to a young fighter about to face his first real battle. "You will win great glory today, but the seeds of your downfall are already planted. The choice you make in the next hour will echo through generations." These weren't idle threats or meaningless riddles. The Morrigan's prophecies always came true, but they came true in ways that taught lessons about fate, choice, and the price of glory. She would show warriors visions of their own deaths, not to frighten them into cowardice, but to help them understand what they were truly fighting for. One warrior might see himself dying heroically while saving his comrades, and choose to embrace that fate. Another might see himself falling due to his own arrogance, and learn humility just in time to change his destiny. The Morrigan's gift wasn't just seeing the future. It was showing people how their choices shaped that future. But perhaps the most terrifying aspect of the Morrigan was her role as the sovereign goddess of the land itself. In Celtic belief, the land and its ruler were mystically connected. A good king brought prosperity and peace to his territory. A bad king brought famine, disease, and defeat. The Morrigan embodied this connection in its darkest form. She was the land's immune system, appearing whenever the natural order was threatened. If a ruler became corrupt or weak, she would manifest to remove them, often in ways that were both brutal and poetic. Picture a tyrant king, drunk on power and blind to his people's suffering. He sits in his great hall, surrounded by flattering courtiers who tell him only what he wants to hear. Outside, his kingdom crumbles, but he doesn't care as long as his own comfort is secure. That's when she would come to him, usually in the form of a beautiful woman seeking shelter for the night. The king, thinking only of his own desires, would welcome her into his hall. But as the night wore on, the woman would begin to change. "Do you know who I am?" she would ask, as her beauty faded, revealing something ancient and terrible underneath. "You are whoever I say you are," the king might reply, too arrogant to recognize the danger. "I am the voice of your land," the Morrigan would answer, her form now fully transformed into something that inspired pure terror. "I am the cry of every child who goes hungry while you feast. I am the blood of every soldier who dies defending a kingdom you have already abandoned. I am the Morrigan, and your reign ends now." What followed was never pretty, but it was always just. The Morrigan didn't simply kill bad rulers. She made sure their deaths served as lessons for whoever came next. She was evolution in action, cutting away the diseased parts of society so that something healthier could grow. This aspect of the Morrigan helps explain why Celtic peoples both feared and revered her. She wasn't a goddess you worshipped for comfort or easy blessings. She was a goddess you respected because she represented necessary truths about life, death, and the responsibilities that come with power. Warriors would sometimes seek her out before major battles, not to ask for victory, but to ask for clarity. They wanted to know what they were really fighting for, what the true stakes were beyond just winning or losing. "Show me what hangs in the balance," a warrior might pray to her. "Let me see the real consequences of this day, so I can fight with full understanding of what I do." The Morrigan would rarely refuse such requests, but her answers were never simple. She might show the warrior visions of the future that would result from victory, a golden age of peace and prosperity. But she would also show what that peace would cost, what sacrifices would be required to maintain it. Or she might reveal that defeat in this battle would actually serve a greater purpose, teaching the warriors' people lessons they needed to learn, or removing obstacles to a better future that they couldn't yet see. Her wisdom was vast, but it was the kind of wisdom that came from seeing the entire tapestry of fate, not just the single thread of one person's life. As Celtic society evolved and Christianity began to spread through Ireland, the Morrigan's role began to change. She didn't disappear. Ancient goddesses rarely do, but she adapted, finding new ways to embody the eternal truths she represented. In some later stories, she became more explicitly connected to the sovereignty of Ireland itself, appearing to kings and heroes as a test of their worthiness to rule. Her transformations became symbols of the land's changing seasons. Her prophecies became warnings about invasions and political upheavals. But even as the culture around her changed, the core of what the Morrigan represented remained constant. She was still the force that demanded excellence, that refused to let people hide from difficult truths, that insisted on authentic courage rather than mere bravado. Modern interpretations of the Morrigan often focus on her as a symbol of female power, and there's truth to that reading. In a world where many goddesses were defined by their relationships to male gods, the Morrigan stood alone, answerable to no one, defining her own purpose and pursuing it with absolute commitment. But to see her only through the lens of gender misses the deeper point. The Morrigan represents the kind of power that transcends human categories, the power of nature itself, the power of truth, the power of consequences that can't be avoided or negotiated away. She reminds us that some things in life are non-negotiable. Death comes to everyone, regardless of wealth or status or good intentions. War reveals character in ways that peace never can. Power corrupts unless it's constantly checked by accountability. These aren't pleasant truths, but they are truths nonetheless, and the Morrigan embodies our need to face them honestly. In our modern world, we often try to sanitize these realities, to find ways around them or pretend they don't apply to us. We want the benefits of power without its responsibilities, the glory of victory without the risk of defeat, the comfort of peace without acknowledging the strength required to maintain it. The Morrigan's ancient wisdom cuts through these illusions like a blade through silk. She reminds us that authentic strength comes from accepting reality as it is, not as we wish it were. That true courage isn't the absence of fear, but the decision to act rightly despite fear. That real wisdom includes understanding the full cost of our choices, including costs we might not want to pay. The shape-shifting goddess of war continues to call to us across the centuries. Her message as relevant today as it was to Celtic warriors preparing for battle. She challenges us to look beyond comfortable lies to uncomfortable truths, to choose growth over safety, to embrace the full spectrum of human experience instead of hiding from its darker aspects. Her crows still circle overhead, her voice still whispers in the wind, and her ancient wisdom still offers guidance to anyone brave enough to listen. The Morrigan remains what she has always been, not a goddess to worship for comfort, but a force to respect for the essential truths she embodies about power, responsibility, and the price of authentic living. Subscribe if you're ready to explore more of mythology's darkest and most powerful truths.